of loving them less than they love Jesus, not being like the man in his illustration of the evening meal who turned down an important invitation because he just got married. Luke 14:20. The Jews' ancestor Jacob is said to have hated Leah and loved Rachel, meaning that he loved Leah less than her sister Rachel. Genesis 29:31. Footnote. Note that Jesus says that a disciple should hate even his own life, or soul. This means that a true disciple must love Jesus more than he loves his own life, even being willing to lose his life if necessary. Clearly, becoming a disciple of Christ is a serious responsibility. It is not to be undertaken casually, without careful thought. Discipleship may involve hardship and persecution, for Jesus says, "Whoever does not carry his torch or stake and come after me cannot be my disciple." Luke 14:27. Yes, a true disciple of Jesus must be willing to undergo a burden of reproach such as Jesus faced. Jesus has even said that he will die at the hands of his enemies. So the crowds traveling with Jesus need to analyze very carefully what it means to be a disciple of Christ. Jesus emphasizes this with an illustration. For example, he says, "Whoever wanting to build a tower does not first sit down and calculate the expense to see if he has enough to complete it. Otherwise, he might lay its foundation, but not be able to finish it." Luke 14:28-29. Thus, before becoming Jesus' disciples, those traveling with him toward Jerusalem should have firmly decided to carry out the responsibility fully. He underscores that thought with another illustration. What king marching out against another king in war does not first sit down and take counsel whether he is able with 10,000 troops to stand up to the one who comes against him with 20,000? If, in fact, he cannot do so, then while that one is yet far away, he sends out a discipleship. How serious? Luke 14:25-35, 196. Body of ambassadors ensues for peace. To emphasize his point, Jesus says, "In the same way, you may be sure that not one of you who does not say goodbye to all his belongings can be my disciple." Luke 14:31-33. Of course, Jesus is not saying that only for the crowds following him on the road. All who learn of Christ must be willing to do what he is saying here. This means that they need to be ready to sacrifice everything they have. Their belongings, even their life. If they are to be his disciples. That is something to think and pray about. Now Jesus brings up a matter that he touched on in his Sermon on the Mount, when he said that his disciples are the salt of the earth. Matthew 5:13. He likely meant that even as literal salt is a preservative, his disciples have a preserving effect on people, protecting them from spiritual and moral decay. Now, as his ministry draws to a close, he says, "Salt, to be sure, is fine. But if the salt loses its strength, with what will it be seasoned?" Luke 14:34. His listeners know that some salt available then was impure, mixed with earthy matter and thus of little use. So Jesus is showing that even those who have long been his disciples must not let their determination grow weak. If that were to happen, they would become useless, like salt that has lost its strength. The world might then ridicule them. More than that, they would be unfit before God, even bringing reproach upon his name. Jesus stresses the importance of avoiding that outcome, saying, "Let the one who has ears to listen, listen." Luke 14:35. The cost of being a disciple. What does Jesus mean in saying that a disciple must hate his relatives and even his own life? What is Jesus teaching by means of his illustrations about building a tower and about a king with an army? What is the point of Jesus' comments about salt? 84-197. At various times during his ministry, Jesus has emphasized the importance of humility. Luke 14:8-11. He is eager to find men and women who desire to serve God humbly. Up till now, some of them may still be notorious sinners. The Pharisees and scribes notice that such individuals, people whom they consider unworthy, are drawn to Jesus and his message. They complain, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Luke 15:2. The Pharisees and scribes feel superior and treat the common people like dirt under their feet. Reflecting the contempt they have for such ones, The leaders used the Hebrew expression and